Ryan Wilson's latest mock draft looks like this. The Titans taking Arvell Reese out of Ohio State at number 1. The first quarterback to go is Indiana's Fernando Mendoza to the Saints, but not the only QB in that top 10. So for more on this, let's welcome in the mock drafter himself, Ryan Wilson. The number 1 overall pick is Arvell Reese, who back in October, you had him toward the bottom of the first round. I'm not saying you were wrong, because there's a lot of people who saw this guy really coming out of nowhere. I mean, you see him continue to climb up the mock draft board. So why has he grown on you this season?
Hey, Emily, good to see you. You see there in Arvell's headshot, he is not happy with the idea that we weren't talking about him in September. But if you, over the summer, no one had Arvell Reese pegged as a potential top 5 pick. And no disrespect to him, but he played at a school at Ohio State where there what feels like thousands of dudes. But Arvell has separated himself very early on, starting in that Texas game, and he has just ascended from there. He is equal parts Micah Parsons coming out of Penn State, equal parts Abdul Carter last year as well coming out of Penn State. He's not as thick as those players right now, but his athleticism, his versatility, where he lines up on the field, which is just about everywhere, and his ability to take over games has been truly special to watch. And I say that fully understanding that he plays in the same defense as Caleb Downs, who's probably going to be a top 10 pick as well. So is it crazy to think that the Titans might take him first overall? A little bit. There may be some team wants to trade him to get a quarterback, but if they're stuck there, there are way worse options than taking someone like Arvell Reese, who will come in right away and transform the middle of that defense with the added benefit that if you want to rush him off the edge, if you want to play him in the slot, he can do all those things as well.
I will say the college football world in general was very surprised by how good this Ohio State defense was, considering all that they lost in the draft last year. So not the only one shocked by him coming out of seemingly nowhere. Meanwhile, there was a lot of smoke around Fernando Mendoza, and you have him going to the Saints at number 2. Second straight mock, you've had New Orleans taking the Indiana quarterback. So what do you like about the potential fit there?
He's been special this year. That whole Indiana outfit has been special. And you just talked about the Ohio State defense. We're going to find out right quick what Fernando Mendoza looks like against an Ohio State defense, because they're going to match up this weekend. But look, every other test he has passed with flying colors. They took it to Oregon and Dante Moore earlier this season, and he does everything at a high level. The questions were transferring from Cal. What was that going to look like playing behind a better offensive line with better skill position players? It's looked better than expected. The other issue, Emily, is that this quarterback class could end up having one or two guys that are potential first-round picks should some other names decide to go back, in which case that makes the price of Fernando Mendoza even higher. I think he's a top 5 pick. He's one of my favorite players in this draft class, given the way he's played this year. And even though the Saints took Tyler Shuck 40th overall in the last draft, he hasn't blown my hair back, pun intended. And when second-round picks are usually drafted, that doesn't preclude a team from taking one if they have the first overall pick in the subsequent draft. So don't be surprised, even if the Saints, like Tyler Shuck, they fall in love with someone like Fernando Mendoza.
Yeah, I love the point that you mentioned with we'll get Arvell Reese versus Fernando Mendoza almost this weekend, so we'll get to see those two sharing a football field. Elsewhere in championship weekend, you've got Alabama quarterback Ty Simpson. Taking a bit of a fall for you from number 2 to number 7. I know that has to do a lot with draft position. You have him now going to the Jets. So what was the thought process there?
Yeah, you nailed it. The draft position and team needs, and there's a little run on defensive players there. The Raiders might be a consideration. They have so many things to fix. Maybe you start on defense, so that's why I had them passing on Ty Simpson. But I love everything about Ty Simpson's game except for 2 things. He hasn't played a lot of football. That's not the end of the world. There are guys that didn't play a lot of football in college who went on to be extremely successful NFL quarterbacks. The other thing, and I wrote about this last week, Emily, for as precise and clinical as he is within 25 yards of the line of scrimmage, and he is one of the best in college football, once he starts pushing the ball down the field, he is one of the worst, not only this season, but if you look back the last 5 or 6 draft classes, going back to Joe Burrow's draft in 2020, he struggles pushing the ball down the field. Now, he's had drops. Ryan Williams hasn't helped him. I almost called him Ryan Wilson. I was going to blame that Ryan Williams on me. That was Ryan Williams. But he has also missed some throws, and that leaves some teams curious about how to fix it. It can be fixed, but when you're taking a quarterback in the top 10, those are the conversations you're going to have as to why he's not doing those things as efficiently as he does on the throws that are closer to the line of scrimmage.
Meanwhile, Clemson edge T.J. Parker falling as well from number 7 to the Eagles now at number 23. We know the Tigers aren't a good team, but what warranted his fall?
You know what? He hasn't looked like the same player that we saw last year. Coming into the summer, out of the summer into the season, he was, I think, my top-rated player on the board, maybe number 2 behind Peter Woods, his teammate, but he was certainly top 5. And while he's just as good against the run as he has been, he's not winning the one-on-one matchup as a pass rusher like we saw and at the rate we saw during the 2024 season. Sometimes you find out later that maybe he's a little banged up or something else is going on, but the production hasn't been there, whatever the reason is. And you talked about how this Clemson team has been a huge disappointment. TJ Parker has been okay. He just hasn't been lights out great. That doesn't mean if he lands to the Eagles, he won't figure it out really quickly. It just he hasn't put himself in that top 10, top 15 conversation with the way he's played so far this year, even though his teammate Peter Woods still, to me, is a top 10 pick.
Let's go to the offensive side of the ball with a riser, a new wide receiver into your first-round mock. You've got Texas A&M wide receiver KC Concepcion. You have the Jets selecting him at number 22. What do you like about him as a prospect?
It feels like such a great fit for what they have. They traded for A.D. Mitchell in that Sauce Gardner trade, so they have the big downfield threat. Garrett Wilson will come back from injury, and then you get another weapon for whoever the quarterback ends up being. And KC Concepcion, no player outside of maybe Arvell Reese and Fernando Mendoza has helped himself as much as KC has this year. Transferred from NC State to Texas A&M, and we know what he can do as a receiver because he lights up defenses just about every week. He can play in the slot. He can play outside if you want him to. He is a dangerous kick returner, has 2 kick return touchdowns this year, including one against LSU, a few weeks ago. And taking that all together, he feels like a first-round target because of that versatility, because of his explosive playmaking ability, and because of what he can do in the return game. And if he comes to a team like the Jets, where you don't have to be the number 1 or the number 2, but the number 3, it allows him to ease into an offense without the expectations that come that some of these young wide receivers feel. Like A.D. Mitchell, for example, didn't quite work out in Indianapolis, scored his first touchdown yesterday in New York.
Yeah, he is a weapon in all phases. So he is in from being out. Now someone out after being in is Oregon edge Matayo Uiagalelei. He's falling out of the first round in this most recent mock draft for you. So where do you see him slotted now?
He feels like a second-round pick, Emily, and that's only because he's 20 years old and 4 months. So he is barely 20. He's not old enough to drink. And he looks like he's 35 years old with the way he's built. And he's been playing football in the NFL for 15 years. But I go back to this. Tuli Tuipulotu, coming out of USC a few years ago, was a second-round pick. He was much further along in his development than Matayo was coming out of Oregon. And I think if we're realistic about our expectations, despite the physical presence that Matayo is when he walks into a room, the reality is he's probably closer to a top 50 guy than a top 32 guy. Now, that doesn't mean he can't reach that full potential and do it quickly, but I think based on what we've seen so far this season and last season when he was just 19 years old, he's not close to being a finished product. He can certainly get there, but he's not better than Tuli Tuipulotu for me coming out of school. And Tuli's had a fantastic career so far for the Chargers. I think preach a little patience with Matayo coming out of college and how you coach him up once he gets into the NFL.
Brian, it is officially December, and we've gotten a lot of data points from these draft-eligible prospects here now at the end of the regular season for college football. So what goes into the mock draft process this time of year when you have that whole season under your belt?
Yeah, so all the games are almost put to bed, right? We have some bowl games to look forward to, but you have to figure out the quarterback situation. We're at that point. And then the question becomes, Emily, which of these players are going to return to school and make things more dire for teams in need for a quarterback, for example? What does it look like at other positions? The edge rush position isn't necessarily deep. The offensive line position isn't necessarily deep. And this will inform what the NFL teams do during free agency, because if they need to fill these needs before the draft, because a lot of these guys return to school, that creates a whole other set of issues as these teams try to figure out what they need to do as the draft approaches. And I think we're 143 days away from the draft, so make a note, because it's getting here pretty quickly.
It certainly is, considering we've been doing this for a long time, the fact that it's only that many days. It'll be here before we know it. Ryan Wilson, appreciate you walking us through your new mock draft. So that's how he sees it. Here's how the odds makers see it. They've got Ty Simpson, the favorite to go number 1 overall, followed by Fernando Mendoza, somebody we didn't mention, but still very high up in his mock draft, Ruben Bain Jr. You've got Arvell Reese, Dante Moore, Lenora Sellers still up there as shortest odds to go number 1 overall. And